She sat on the cold pavement, her back against a brick wall, arms wrapped around herself for warmth. The cardboard sign in front of her told a story in just a few words. U.S. veteran, no home, no hope. People passed without a glance. Some even crossed the street to avoid her. She had been invisible for years until he stopped. Tucker Carlson, the man who had interviewed presidents, exposed scandals, and sparked debates across the country. He wasn't supposed to be here, in this rundown part of town, in the dead of night, but he was. And what he did next, no one could have expected. The woman looked up, squinting against the glow of the streetlight. She had seen countless faces come and go, but this one was different. There was no pity in his eyes, no disgust, just curiosity. Tucker crouched down, his expensive shoes touching the same filthy pavement where she sat. His voice was calm but firm. "What's your name?" For a moment, she hesitated. People rarely asked. When they did, it was usually just before they walked away. "Lisa," she finally answered, her voice hoarse from days of hunger and cold. "Lisa," Tucker repeated, nodding as if sealing the name in his mind. "How long have you been out here?" Lisa let out a dry laugh, long enough to stop counting. She had once worn a uniform, served her country, followed orders. Now she was just another forgotten face on the street. Life after the military hadn't gone as planned. A few bad breaks, a failed system, and here she was, begging just to survive. Tucker didn't interrupt, he just listened, and then, without warning, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Lisa watched, confused. People didn't make calls for her, they made calls about her, usually to tell someone to move her along. But this was different, and in the next few moments, she would realize her life was about to change forever. Lisa sat there, her fingers tightening around the frayed edges of her coat as Tucker spoke into his phone. His tone was serious, like he was giving instructions to someone who needed to get things done, fast. She couldn't hear the other person on the line, but she caught fragments of what he was saying. "Yes, tonight, find a place now. I don't care what it costs." When he ended the call, he looked back at her. "Lisa, do you trust me?" She blinked. The question felt strange. Trust? That wasn't something she handed out freely anymore. Tucker must have seen the hesitation in her face, because he gave a small nod. "Fair enough. Let's start with this. I'm getting you out of here tonight." Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard promises before. Shelters that were full, programs with long waiting lists, people who meant well but never followed through. But then, minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. A man in a dark coat stepped out and walked straight toward Tucker. "It's done," the man said. "We have a place for her." Lisa's breath caught. This wasn't just another empty promise. It was real. But then, just as she was about to stand, a voice cut through the air. "Hey, what's going on here?" A security guard had spotted them from across the street. He was already reaching for his radio. Lisa tensed. She knew how this played out. Someone always wanted her gone. But Tucker, he didn't flinch. Instead, he stood up slowly, turned to the guard, and said something that left the man speechless. What he said next would change everything. The security guard gripped his radio. His eyes flicked between Lisa and Tucker, suspicion all over his face. "Sir, is there a problem here?" Tucker didn't miss a beat. He took a slow step forward, his voice steady but firm. "Yeah, there is. This woman served her country, and now, she's being treated like she doesn't exist." The guard hesitated. His posture shifted slightly, but he still looked skeptical. "Look, I get it," Tucker continued. "You've got a job to do. You see people out here all the time, and maybe you think they're all the same. But Lisa, she's not some nobody. She's a veteran. And right now, I'm making sure she doesn't spend another night on this street." The guard's grip on the radio loosened. The tension in his shoulders eased. For the first time, Lisa saw something in his face that wasn't annoyance. It was understanding, maybe even guilt. I didn't know," the guard muttered. Glancing at Lisa, she swallowed hard. People rarely looked at her like that anymore. Tucker gave a nod. Now you do. A long silence followed. Then, without another word, the guard gave a small, almost apologetic nod, and stepped back. He didn't say anything into his radio. He just let them go. Lisa exhaled, her chest tightening with something she hadn't felt in years, relief. She turned to Tucker. "Why are you doing this?" Tucker looked her in the eye. "Because no one else did." And with that, he motioned toward the SUV. Lisa had a choice. She could stay in the life she had known for so long, the life of cold streets, ignored pleas, and broken promises. Or she could take a chance on something different. Her hands trembled as she reached for the car door, but just as she was about to step inside, a voice from behind her stopped her cold. Lisa, her blood ran ice cold. She knew that voice. It was a name she hadn't heard in over a decade. And when she turned around, the person standing there made her knees go weak. Lisa's breath hitched. The city noise around her seemed to vanish. The man standing a few feet away looked older, his face worn by time, but there was no mistaking him. "Michael?" she whispered. He took a slow step forward, his eyes locked onto hers, almost as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. "Lisa, it's really you." She felt dizzy. This wasn't possible. Michael had been her closest friend in the military. They had served side by side, looked out for each other through the worst of it. He was the one person she thought would always have her back. But then, he was gone, just like everyone else. Her hands clenched into fists. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I looked for you. I had nothing, and I looked for you." Michael's face twisted with regret. "Lisa, I swear, I didn't know." Tucker watched the exchange in silence, his eyes darting between them. He had seen his fair share of dramatic moments, but this was something else entirely. Michael swallowed hard. "After I got out, I tried to track you down, but I was dealing with my own demons. I barely kept myself together. I figured you were okay. I told myself you had to be okay." Lisa let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, I wasn't." For years, she had told herself it didn't matter, that she had stopped expecting people to show up for her. But seeing Michael now, hearing his voice, all those old wounds ripped open. Michael took another step closer. "Let me help, please. I have a place, a job. You don't have to do this alone." Lisa stared at him. A part of her wanted to run. Another part wanted to collapse into his arms and just break down. Tucker finally spoke up. "Lisa, you don't have to decide everything tonight. But you don't have to sleep on this sidewalk either." Lisa looked back at the SUV. A way out, a chance. And then she looked at Michael, a past she thought was gone. Her heart pounded. And then, she made her choice. Lisa took a deep breath, her eyes darting between Tucker, the SUV, and Michael. Her mind raced. This was more than just a ride. It was a decision that could change everything. Her fingers twitched at her side. The streets had been her reality for so long. Trusting someone again, letting someone back into her life, that was terrifying. Michael took a hesitant step forward. "Lisa, you don't have to say yes, but just don't say no yet. Let me prove I'm here." Tucker crossed his arms, studying her. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't forcing. He was just waiting. Lisa swallowed hard, and then, she reached for the car door handle. Her grip tightened around it. A single moment, a simple action, but it felt like the biggest leap she'd ever taken. She glanced at Michael one last time. "If I go, I'm not looking back." Michael nodded, his voice firm. "Then I'll walk forward with you." She pulled the door open, slid inside, and for the first time in years, Lisa wasn't alone. As the SUV pulled away, Tucker sat back, watching her. "Lisa, this isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning." And he was right, because what happened next was something no one saw coming. What do you think happens next? Does Lisa rebuild her life? Does Michael stay true to his word? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to hear the rest of Lisa's story, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, this is only the beginning.